On to 6A. We're going to start with Region 4. The team we're going to start out with in Region 4 is the team that many people believe is the best team in the state, and that's going to be the Bingham Miners. They have at least 5 D1 caliber players, and 4 of them are on the defensive side of the ball. It's going to be very difficult to score on them this year. They actually had the #1 ranked defense in 6A last year, and I expect that to be the case again this year. Running back Braden Whistler is going to be the main part of their offense. He had 955 yards and 16 touchdowns last year. And those defensive players are linebacker Lolani Longi, defensive lineman Samodi Pepa, linebacker Soleke Ata, and linebacker Junior Tafuna. All of these guys will be playing college football at some level for someone next year. And I look forward to seeing a couple of their games this year and really giving my 2 cents on which of those kids are the best. Next up in Region 4 is American Fork. American Fork, they're going to have a new quarterback in Boone Abbott. He's going to need to step up in order to duplicate the 2017 offensive production that American Fork saw, which was just under 41 points a game. Their defense will also need to step up their performance, especially in giving up points. They averaged giving up almost 36 points a game last year. That's going to be huge for them. A lot of their season success is going to rest on how well their defense plays. One player that is on their team that I really love is wide receiver Chase Roberts. Had 1,200 yards receiving last year, 15 touchdowns, and he is a BYU commit. Pleasant Grove. Pleasant Grove has 14 returning starters. They must get better on the defensive side of the ball. Offense will need to limit turnovers to help them be successful this year. One of the areas there is with the quarterback Jake Jensen, just making sure he cuts the number of interceptions down, making sure he's taking care of the ball. Over 2,000 yards passing last year, 21 touchdowns. He's going to be throwing to wide receiver Jackson Hill, 449 yards with 5 touchdowns last year. On the defensive side of the ball, they've got a young linebacker, Spencer Tautioli, 50 tackles with 3 sacks. And I believe that was as a freshman. So he's a very young, very talented young man. And I believe all those players are going to help Pleasant Grove make the playoffs this year and possibly make a deep run depending on the development of that quarterback. Lone Peak. Lone Peak must find an answer at quarterback. But other than that, they're very talented on both sides of the ball. With Lone Peak, the only way that they're going to compete with Bingham is that they're going to have to use their speed and athleticism to put pressure on them, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Lone Peak has some great pass rushers, and I really can't wait to see how they've developed over the summer and see what they can do. Some of the players I want to call out for Lone Peak: running back Mason Wake, over 1,100 yards rushing last year, 6 touchdowns. Running back Kobe Freeman, 876 yards rushing with 7 touchdowns. Defensive end Michael Daly, another BYU commit, 32 tackles and 5 sacks. Linebacker Jared Fotu, 51 tackles and 7 sacks. Westlake. Westlake will need quarterback Caden Johnson to have a good year in order to improve on last season's 0-10 record. Also, they must find a way to give up less than 43.1 points per game. That's a must. You're not going to win any football games giving up that many points. So they really just need to find a way to be better defensively. The answer may be found in the returning linebacker core of Bronson Goodwin and Isaac Greenwood. Look for them to have a good year and lead that defense to improvement. Players to watch in Region 4. All the Bingham kids that I mentioned. And they've got kids that I didn't mention that are worth watching. So if you find yourself bored on a Friday night, go out to a Bingham football game. You're gonna see some very talented kids competing at the highest level. Chase Roberts, wide receiver, American Fork. Jake Jensen, quarterback from Pleasant Grove. And then those Lone Peak young men that I mentioned as well, especially the running backs. 2 very, very talented running backs at Lone Peak. They would be fun to watch as well if you want to go to a game. My picks for Region 4. I'm picking Bingham to win Region 4, followed by Lone Peak, Pleasant Grove, American Fork, and Westlake. My dark horse in Region 4 is Pleasant Grove. I find it hard to fathom anyone finishing above Lone Peak and Bingham, but Pleasant Grove may have the athletes to do it if they get balls to bounce their way, and they just get some things to really break in their benefit, to be honest. Whether that's injuries to Lone Peak and Bingham, or maybe some wacky things happening in their head-to-head matchups, or you just never know. And that's why I love picking the dark horses, because sometimes you just never know who's going to rise to the occasion. Region 3. So a lot of these teams are on the west side of the Salt Lake Valley, plus east, essentially. And in fact, east is where I want to start out. So when we talk about east, good luck stopping East triple option attack. They are very good at running it, and they will just ram the ball down your throat. So please be ready to stop the run when you're playing east. They have an extremely talented group of wide receivers and running backs. That's probably why they're as good as they are offensively. Coming back to lead that group is running back Charlie Vincent and running back wide receiver Andre Toilolo. The defense has Sayaki Ika. He is the #1 recruit in the state of Utah. If you are looking at any ranking system that I've seen, he's everyone's top guy from the state. So I'm going to be very excited to see him in person and really see if he matches what I've heard about him. One last thing I want to say about East is if their young talent grows and develops and gets better during season, they just have a great year. They could be a really scary team to face come playoff time. West Jordan. Their quarterback Oakley Kopp is back from injury. They're going to have to get a great year out of him in order for the Jaguars to finish higher than the 3rd spot. That's where I'm projecting them right now. Defense played well, led by linebacker Helaman Sosi and defensive back Torin Vredavelli. West Jordan really just needs a better year offensively, and I think they're going to be in good shape, especially to make the playoffs. Like I said, to actually host a playoff game, they're going to need a great year from Oakley Kopp. Riverton is going to need an inexperienced offensive line to step up and help their quarterback, Cannon Coggins, to have a better year. This will help their scoring points per game if the offensive line steps up and improves. They will need their returning defensive players to improve upon the 31.1 points per game they gave up last year. If they're able to do those two things, see some offensive line improvement, see a better defense show up game in and game out, they're going to have a chance to make the playoffs. Harriman stud is a kid by the name of Blake Freeland. He actually played quarterback for them last year. He switched to be a tight end this year, and we'll see how that goes. He's a very talented and athletic kid, so I'm not worried about it. It'll just be interesting to see how their new quarterback deals with that situation, if they're getting the same production they got last year. One more thing with Freeland is he is a BYU commit, so he again is one of those top recruits in the state, and someone kind of look at and see if he's as good as advertised. Kind of what I was just saying there with their quarterback play. Quarterback play will be important in helping them be more effective on the offensive side of the football. They need to score more, need to have more explosive offensive plays. Defensively, they had a great year last year, and they'll need another great year from their linebacker, defensive end Carter Pierce, and linebacker Austin Persley for them to repeat that type of performance and have another great year on that side of the ball. Copper Hills. For the Grizzlies, it comes down to two things. The offensive and defensive lines need to get better and ensure that they do not get pushed around like they have in years past. They also need to find more explosiveness on offense. At some point in time, it comes down to being able to score the football. I'm not a huge advocate of trying to outscore your opponents, but if that's the only way you can win ball games, go for it. But at the same time, you need to find ways to score, and they did not do so last year, averaging just under 12 points a game. Taylorsville. The Warriors will rely heavily on young players to play this year. I expect them to have some learning curve issues because of that. Typically young, inexperienced teams, it's a roller coaster ride to begin the year. But hopefully by the end of the year, they've learned how they need to play, and some of those players have settled into the roles that they've been given. The one bright spot I wanted to point out with Taylorsville is they've got a quarterback by the name of Dane Leituala. Threw for 2,481 yards last year with 25 touchdowns. He must take the next step in his development for Taylorsville to get into the top 2 in this region. Players to watch in Region 3. Just mentioned Dane Leituala, quarterback Taylorsville. Blake Freeland, tight end Harriman. Charlie Vincent, running back East. Sayaki Ika, defensive lineman from East. My picks for Region 3 are as follows. I have East picked to win, followed by Harriman, West Jordan, Taylorsville, Riverton, and Copper Hills. My dark horse in this region is Taylorsville. If their quarterback takes that next step, like I just talked about, and their young talent exceeds the expectations that they have for this year, then they can definitely compete for a region title and get in those top 1 or 2 spots, battling it out with East and Harriman. Region 2. Where I want to start with Region 2 is Kearns. They have a lot of talent at the skills positions, but they need to avoid injury. If they avoid those injuries, they'll have a great year, and I expect them to be in contention for this region title. Some players I want to call out for Kearns are running back Isaiah Afatasi, 303 yards and 3 touchdowns. Running back Calix Manuo, 181 yards, 1 touchdown. And the defense will be led by Audric Afatasi. He had 76 tackles, 4 sacks, and an interception last year. Next up in Region 2 is Granger. Granger has a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. We'll come down to some of the new faces on defense, as well as the development of their quarterback, LaSalle Laita. They have a beast in the backfield in Moises Manasi. Had over 2,100 yards last year and 22 touchdowns. But look for him to have a great year and really boost Granger from an offensive standpoint. Like I said, if they get good production out of those young defensive players, I think they'll be in good shape in 2018. Hunter has a new head coach this year, and it'll come down to how they implement the system, whether they can live up to the hype of their talent. So they have a lot of talent, and they are a very good football team. Just the question mark is how they'll implement the new system of their new head coach. They'll be very good in their spread offense, led by quarterback Deshaun Cash. Threw for almost 2,400 yards last year and 22 touchdowns. His favorite target was Mason Femilar, 421 yards and 4 touchdowns. Hillcrest is the next team I want to talk about in Region 2. Hillcrest is very young and inexperienced. Look forward to this team showing growth and progress, but they really need to be more disciplined in order to win games. And this is discipline on both sides of the football and executing at a high level so that they can score some more points and so their opponents can score less. The last team in Region 2 that I want to talk about is Cypress. Cypress will need their young players to contribute at a high level, especially to improve a defense that struggled in giving up almost 32 points a game. They've got some great players on this team that I do want to discuss. Quarterback Parker Meldrum needs to take the next step in his development for them to compete for a playoff spot. He did throw for over 2,000 yards last year with 17 touchdowns. but his interception number was a little higher than I would like it to be. Just needs to make better decisions with the ball, be more efficient. They've got a running back by the name of Albert Taufui. Ran for 227 yards and 5 touchdowns last year. He's going to pick up more of the load this year. He's going to get some more carries, so I expect him to have a great year and really help Cypress be the type of team that I think they can be with great offensive play. Players to watch in Region 2. Audric Afatasi, linebacker from Kearns. Moises Manasi, running back Granger. Deshaun Cash, quarterback from Hunter. My picks to win Region 2. I've picked Granger to win this region, followed by Kearns, Hunter, Cypress, and Hillcrest. My dark horse is Hunter. This will occur if Deshaun Cash has become a top-tier quarterback. If not, then expect to finish in the middle of the pack. All right, last but not least is Region 1. Region 1, we're going to start out with Clearfield. They will need to answer quarterback questions as well. Must avoid mistakes on both sides of the ball. They're young and lack game experience. That can obviously be problematic. If those young players struggle early, it could snowball into a rough year. One player I'm interested to look at is running back Ethan Jones. He had 346 yards and 2 touchdowns last year. I expect him to pick up the pace and really have a great year. Syracuse, they're going to be breaking in a new quarterback, and the good news is he'll have a good target in wide receiver Ty Burke, who had over 900 total yards last year and 11 touchdowns. They will need to do a better job at limiting mistakes and turnovers on the offensive side of the ball to improve the 22.8 points per game that they scored last year. One player that I'm interested to look at is defensive tackle Dylan Wistison. 56 tackles and 8 sacks last year. If he picks up his game, I really believe that will help Syracuse be in contention for a playoff spot. Weber is ready to turn over QB reins to Cole Hogan. They lost a lot of talent from last year's playoff team. They will need new guys to step up in a big way to make it back to the playoffs. Some of the players I'm looking forward to seeing is wide receiver Hudson Schenk, 708 yards, 10 touchdowns. Wide receiver Sione Moa, 429 yards and 2 touchdowns. Linebacker Brant Hikens, 36 tackles, 1 sack, and 1 interception. And he's a guy that's a possible Division I recruit. So kind of a fun one to look for. And if you have the opportunity to go see him play, get out there and do it. Northridge only has 2 returning starters and very little experience. Could lead to a rough season this year. Most importantly, they'll need a new offensive line and a new quarterback. Those are typically 2 things that if you're replacing them all at one time, it's probably not going to bode well for your program. In order to be a playoff team, they need these 2 areas to perform, though. That's kind of the key. If they get better quarterback play and better line play than anticipated, then they will definitely compete for a playoff spot this year. They've got a tight end by the name of Carson Stokes, who also plays linebacker. He had 302 yards receiving and 3 touchdowns, and then 74 tackles and 2 sacks and 1 interception from his linebacker spot. Really looking forward to seeing him play and looking forward to seeing how he helps Northridge improve this year. Fremont has 10 returning starters. They will need their inexperienced quarterback and receivers to have a great year to improve offensive efficiency. The defense will be good again for them, led by linebacker Trevor Hahn, who had 78 tackles, 3 sacks, and 2 interceptions. I'm excited also to see running back Jay Scott, who had 804 yards with 12 touchdowns. Fremont's one of those sneaky teams where they could be either better than expected or they could be a little bit worse, just depending on how some of those guys perform and if they've improved over the summer. Davis is going to have a new head coach. Both sides of the ball need work. But most of all, the offense needs to score the football. 9 points per game is not great by any stretch of the imagination. They just need to get better and be more explosive on the offensive side of the ball. It's going to be tough, though. They've got newcomers at quarterback and most of the O-line positions, with the only offensive lineman returning being Trace Dunn. So that's going to be an uphill battle, I think. They're going to struggle a good chunk of this year. Look for linebacker Max Tupuola, who had 52 tackles last year with 4 sacks. Look for him to be better this year and really help their defense. Last team I want to talk about in Region 1 is Layton. Layton, both sides of the ball will need to be overhauled, as their margin of victory last year was minus 26.4 points per game. They do have 13 starters coming back, so that will help, but they will need to also improve and do it quickly. They do have a young defensive back, Micah Parkinson, who had 22 tackles and 4 interceptions last year. So I'm looking to see if he's improved and if he's a higher caliber player. And with Layton, like I said, they're going to have to get better on both sides of the ball, and they're going to have to do it quickly in order to be competitive in some of these games. Players to watch in Region 1. We've got Jay Scott, running back from Fremont. Carson Stokes, tight end linebacker from Northridge. Hudson Schenk, wide receiver Weber. Ty Burke, wide receiver Syracuse. My pick to win Region 1 is Syracuse, followed by Fremont, Weber, Davis, Northridge, Clearfield, and Layton. My dark horse in Region 1 is Weber. If the ball bounces the right way for them, they get some breaks, and guys returning have gotten better than I expected, I can see Weber sneaking into contention in Region 1. I know it's been a long video, but the last thing I wanted to do tonight is preview my games of the week. I'm going to 2 football games this week. The first one will be on Thursday night. I'm going to Bingham at Orem. Big thing with that football game is there's a bunch of future college football players that are going to be on that field, and I want to see which of those players I feel like are the best caliber athletes, and I just really want to get a feeling of who the best football players in the state are. The other game that I will be attending this week is on Friday night. I'll be going to the Harriman at Lone Peak football game, so I look forward to that. I really want to see how good Lone Peak actually is. They've got, again, a lot of talent, especially on the offensive side of the football. I want to see if those running backs are as good as advertised. With Harriman, I want to see the Freeland kid. I want to see if he's as advertised. I also want to see how good they are up front. I want to see their front seven. I want to see how they perform against a athletic and fast football team like Lone Peak. All right, if you like the videos, if you like what you're seeing, please subscribe. Turn on your notification bell. You'll get all the videos I do from here on out. Have a good night.